So, welcome to my second video of this series of Foundations of Human Anatomy. Today, we will focus on this respiratory system, the structures involved with it, and some common diseases that affect society on a daily basis. Right, so firstly, what is the importance of the respiratory system? The main function of the respiratory system is to essentially supply your cells with much needed oxygen. This oxygen you would find in the air around you, which then once this is carried to your lungs, gas exchange will happen. And then blood vessels near your alveoli will deliver this oxygen into your cells that need it. And then also has some functions of waste removal and also other products that your body produces. And examples of this will be your waste products and your carbon dioxide. The respiratory system has other functions as well, alongside your oxygen supply and waste removal. Parts of your respiratory system can protect the body from pathogens that you would find in the air that you breathe. You have certain structures in your body, for example, your nose hairs and mucus, which will trap germs and other harmful pathogens to prevent them from entering your body. It also helps you smell through structures like the olfactory bulb, which helps you speak through your vocal cords and your larynx. Now, these are just some of the crucial functions that the respiratory system help your body. So, as you can see here on the diagram on the right, I drew a diagram of the respiratory system highlighting some of the structures that will be used in this video. Now, we got the nasal cavity on the top left, as you can see, and it contains tiny hairs called cilia, alongside the mucous membrane that helps to trap dust and pathogens to prevent them from entering the lungs. It acts as the first line of defense against inhaled pathogens and particles. Furthermore, it tampers with the air we inhale. It moistens, warms, and filters the air before heading to the lungs, helping us prepare the air for the sensitive lung tissues by protecting it against the cold, dry air, which should reduce irritation. The olfactory system basically is broken down into your olfactory bulb, olfactory tract, and your olfactory filaments. It is responsible for the smell. The olfactory filaments contain the necessary sensory neurons to send signals from the olfactory epithelium to the olfactory bulb. So, as you can see on the diagram, highlighted the structures there. So this bulb structure processes and sorts out the signals that it receives from the filaments, and then it sends them to the correct area of the brain to be further processed and interpreted. Now, the olfactory tract's function, which usually is kind of like a single route heading towards the brain, is to basically, after the olfactory bulb has processed the signals coming from the olfactory filaments, they will be sent to the correct areas of the brain. And the olfactory tract is responsible for that. And basically, it sends these signals to certain areas of the brain, specifically the olfactory cortex, amygdala, and entorhinal cortex. And now, the nasal conchae, you will see on the top, on the left of the diagram here, is a bony structure located within the nasal cavity. It helps with humidifying the inhaled air by adding moisture while it passes through this structure, and this protects the delicate lung tissues. Its shape and position help us to create air turbulence, allowing for better mixing of incoming air, so to ensure there is contact with the mucosal surfaces that allows for humidification, filtration, and warming. These sinus cavities are air-filled areas within the bones of the face or skull. It has several functions, including resonance in speech, which allows for the modification of the quality of vocal sounds. This allows us to produce a better sound when speaking or singing. More functions for humidification and warming of air for your sensitive tissues, filtration and protection to trap things like dust, pathogens, and things like that, and also produces mucus and directs them towards your nasal cavity. And this will help prevent blockages or infections as well. One of the functions is that it helps to equalize air pressure in the nasal cavities and sinuses, allowing for more comfort during altitude changes. And an example of this would be, for example, when climbing a mountain. So climbing mountains, you would have changes in pressure, and essentially this structure helps to make the changes more comfortable. Now we got this station tube. Okay, now we got this station tube, and this is basically a tube that connects the middle ear to the nasopharynx, which is basically the upper part of the throat behind the nose. It has several functions, which includes equalizing air pressure in the middle ear with the pressure of the atmosphere outside. So why is this important? Well, it helps to maintain a proper functioning of the eardrum and prevents discomfort or pain during activities like yawning or changes in altitude, like we mentioned with mountain climbing. So furthermore, it has roles in protecting the middle ear from invading pathogens present in the nasopharynx, where this closes during swallowing and yawning to prevent backflow or secretions from the throat to the middle ear. The pharynx is basically the back of the throat, and it's basically a tube that connects the nose and the mouth down to the esophagus and larynx, which you can see on the diagram, which is highlighted. You will see these functions being repeated. So like functions of facilitating air passage from the nasal cavity and mouth to the larynx and trachea for respiration, functions in immune defense by having things like your tonsils or adenoids, which help protect against pathogens by trapping and getting rid of them. And also when swallowing, the muscles of the pharynx will move food from the mouth to the esophagus, which is the food tube. And this is especially important to avoid having food enter the airway. Now we got the epiglottis, and the epiglottis is acting like a trapdoor. It's located at the bottom of the tongue, and you can see on the diagram here. It prevents the aspiration, which is referring to the inhalation of like things like food, liquids, and other foreign materials into your trachea. And it does this by closing during the act of swallowing. It helps basically direct food and liquids to the esophagus into the stomach, rather than the air tube. Now we got the oral cavity. The oral cavity has a mechanical function of breaking down food into smaller bits so that they can be easily swollen. Easily swollen, which also allows us to. Okay. Now we have the oral cavity. The oral cavity has a mechanical function of breaking down food into smaller bits, and this is so that they can be easily swollen. It allows us to perceive different flavors, which are sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. And also plays a role in appetite and food preferences, and also oral hygiene, where your saliva, which it produces, will wash away food particles and maintain oral health through controlling harmful bacteria. Now we got the larynx, also known as the voice box, has a role of voice production. When air passes through the closed vocal cords, they vibrate and create a sound in the form of speaking. It regulates the airflow into the trachea by being able to adjust the size of the opening towards the trachea, and hence it controls the airflow alongside other rows. Now we got the thyroid cartilage, and this basically provides essential support and structure to the larynx, the voice box, and also has roles in protecting the larynx vocal cords. You will see like some people will have this Adam's apple as well. The trachea. Trachea is called your windpipe and has roles in air conduction, carrying air to the bronchi and then to the bronchioles and then finally to the alveoli, and contains also cartilaginous rings. You can see it here, it's kind of colored in blue and kind of looks like rings wrapped around the windpipe, and that prevents it from collapsing on itself. So we'll switch to the next slide, but you can see it here in the bottom, and also has the trachea also has cilia hairs as well as goblet cells, and these are basically the cells in charge of producing mucus that traps pathogens and other foreign stuff like dust. Now you can see it here, the blue rings in here of the trachea, preventing it from collapsing on itself, and now you see here next to it is the esophagus, and this is the food pipe. It directs food to the stomach, but it's not part of the respiratory system, but it's good to know where it's located. Now the air then moves to the bronchi. You can see the large tubes in here connected to the two lungs in here, and then they will branch out into smaller tubes known as bronchioles and finally reach in the alveoli, where gas exchange happens with red blood cells and capillaries. The bronchi also have cartilaginous rings in their walls to maintain this structure and prevent collapse. And also the bronchioles distribute the air throughout the lungs to the alveoli, where its muscles allow for constriction and dilation to regulate airflow. Finally, the alveoli facilitates the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between air and the bloodstream. So during inhalation, oxygen from the air will diffuse into the red blood cells in the blood. At the same time, carbon dioxide will diffuse from the blood. So will diffuse from the blood into the air found in the alveoli, which is then exhaled and removed from the body. Now you can see at the bottom here, located at the base of the lungs, is the diaphragm. This muscle is responsible for inhalation of air. So what it does is it will contract, move downwards during inhalation, and this will increase the thoracic volume and create a negative pressure. And this results in the air moving into the lungs. Now, during exhalation, the diaphragm will move upwards and relax. And this increases the pressure and decreases the thoracic volume instead. And this results in air inside the lungs being pushed out. Now, as you can see here, I've actually put the whole diagram in here just so you can take a screenshot if you want to. Now, before ending this video, I want to highlight some respiratory diseases that is commonly present in society. You can see it highlighted in here on the left. So we have asthma, and this is a condition where the airway become narrow and swell. They may produce more mucus and make breathing more difficult. They may come along with wheezing, coughing, and shortness of breath. There's no current cure for asthma, but it can be controlled using prescribed inhalers, identifying and avoiding triggers, and making lifestyle changes. But what are the symptoms? As shortness of breath, chest pain, trouble sleeping because of this, and also wheezing when exhaling. Now we have COPD, known as chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. This is the name for a group of pulmonary diseases that make breathing a bit difficult. Now this includes emphysema, which is damage to the air sacs in the lungs, and also chronic bronchitis, which is a long-term inflammation of the airways. This condition gets gradually worse over time, and it's common mostly in middle-aged and older adults. Now, we got some symptoms here, which includes shortness of breath, chest infections frequently, and constant wheezing and a constant cough with phlegm. You might ask, how can I get COPD? Well, it happens when the lungs and airways become damaged and inflamed, and this usually happens due to long-term exposure to substances that are harmful, for example, smoking. Okay, now we got tuberculosis. Tuberculosis is an infectious disease that affects the lungs, which is caused by bacteria. It spreads airborne when people with tuberculosis cough or sneeze. But however, unlike asthma, this is a curable disease through antibiotics. However, it is fatal without treatment. Now you got some symptoms, which includes weakness, weight loss, constant coughing, sometimes with blood, fatigue, and things like night sweats. Now we got pulmonary fibrosis, a lung disease where there is scarring, thickening, or stiffness of lung tissue. And this makes it difficult for the lungs to function properly. Now, some symptoms include having shortness of breath, for example, but this is only in some patients. Unfortunately, this will lead to the body organs not getting enough oxygen to do its function properly. Okay, so thank you for watching this video. I hope you learned something today, and don't forget to do your own research on this topic, as I have not even scratched the surface of the respiratory system. So please do keep learning and learning new things every day. Anyway, have a good day and Godspeed.